Hello, my gorgeous, powerful listeners. How are you guys doing today? I'm so excited to have you join me back on the show for another amazing story. I'm joined by Carole Gill today. Professional Success from the Inside Out is the name of her business. And Carole is, oh my gosh, she's built a business of 27 years of standing while raising two kids while not having internet, right? 27 years ago, things were a little bit different. And what drew me to her, I invited her to the show because out of some of the topics she posted, one just hit me like a cup of cold water, was around dealing with difficult people and emotional intelligence. And, you know, we can describe our life experience in so many ways, but describing it in that context probably captures a lot of learning about how we react to what's happening around us. And it'd be a disservice not to take advantage, first of all, of learning from somebody with 3 decades of experience behind them in this. But what's also wonderful about Carole is she is another new female business owner who is now launching and leveraging this, you know, admirable, respected business career. This has been her own entrepreneurial pursuit and evolving it now into something more personal, more heart-led as she learns more about herself and gives herself more freedom to express what's inside of her to the world and share it with the world and make an impact in a new way. As well as in the preamble, we were talking about releasing ourselves from what no longer fits. So, you know, I see business owners from time to time, the really bold ones, the really certain of themselves ones, blow everything up and move it into something else. And it's fascinating. And I think it's very strong leadership to remind us that nothing is ever finite. And don't keep yourself in a box if that box is no longer working for you, or forget the box entirely. So welcome to the show, Carole. I'm so excited. We've been having such a great time on the preamble, and I think we're gonna just blow people's minds away with some wisdom and laughter and insights.
Well, thank you so much, Mia. I'm glad to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah. So why don't we start with you just in your own words telling us like what have you learned about running a business and what inspired you to start back when
Mm.
you launched your first version?
Oh, wow. Well, okay, so I'll start with what inspired me first. I was with corporate America for almost 17 years
Mhm.
and had moved my way up into the organization and the HR side of the house. I worked
Mm.
for a large telecommunications company, and we were the data services side of the house. Okay, so we did all the back end processing and telephone bills and all that kind of good stuff when we used to have real telephones
Yeah.
in our houses. And so at that time, that was in the early 90s. Deregulation was happening. So there was a
Mhm.
lot that the government was taking over. There were many things that were happening with telephone companies, and wireless was just in its infancy. So we didn't even I can remember my first
Yeah.
wireless phone was in a box about as big as a shoebox.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that tells you how old I am. But the the world was very different. And when GTE was the name of the company that I worked for, and it was being kind of consolidated and merged with Bell Atlantic and
Mhm.
into Verizon, which is now known as Verizon, and Verizon Data Services is still alive, but it's a lot of the other things are gone. But through that whole process, I learned a great deal about transition and acquisition and merging, and because I was in the HR realm, and I had a great job. I sat at the seat of the table with a senior leadership team. And I was a generalist, so I got to be involved in everything that was going on, which was really fun for me, and it was very fulfilling. And then that job was eliminated, and
Oh,
I was
yeah.
given a week to throw everything in my office into a very large garbage can, and was told, we love you, we don't want to see you go away, so we're going to keep you. We have a 2-level downgrade as a
Mhm.
compensation administrator that we want you to take. And oh, by the way, excuse me, your salary will be frozen, but that's okay, we're not going to take money away from you.
Mm.
And at that point in my life, and I'd been there about 15 years at that point, and
Yeah.
I had 2 little boys. I was a single mom. I was making a very good salary
Mhm.
and had great benefits. And I knew that it would be very difficult for me to go somewhere else and make that same package.
Okay.
And I felt stuck and I felt trapped. And I took the downgrade because I had to stay here. My mom and dad were local,
Mhm.
excuse me, and I was becoming their caregiver.
Okay.
So leaving and going somewhere else was not an option for me.
Yeah.
And I was very unhappy. I went from a very highly engaged,
Mhm.
committed,
Mhm.
in everything person,
Using all your skills,
uh,
scratching all the
to a
activating bits. Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
very unhappy camper who
Right.
complained about everything, who,
Oh,
I mean, I didn't like me. So
yeah.
I can imagine that the people around me didn't like me at all
Okay.
because I was miserable and
Mhm.
it was bad. I felt betrayed. I felt
Hurt,
taken advantage
disappointed,
of. I
yeah,
was hurt,
lost.
because I had given up so much. I mean,
Now
with little
what?
kids, I was traveling all over the
Yeah,
country. And
right. So the
so I
resentment
lived in that.
piece. Yeah.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
I
Very
lived in that for about a year.
okay.
And I can remember sitting at a table with a bunch of people at lunchtime. And I was doing my normal, typical complaining
Right.
about,
Yeah.
everything. And this one young lady looked at me and she said, and she was a part-time person. She didn't have to work. She worked because she wanted to.
Uh,
And she looked at me and she said, Carol, if you hate it that much here, you really could leave. You do have choices. And at that point in my life, I wasn't really ready to hear that.
yeah.
If I had had something to throw at her, I would have.
Yeah.
Um, I told her in no uncertain terms she didn't have a clue what she was talking about.
Right.
And I got up and I halved away from the table. But what
Right.
she did for me was like hit me over the head with a 2x4.
I know I'm
Because
crying.
oh, it was
I feel it. I go
it
back to that
was
moment, right?
it was horrendous because
Like
I
an
went home
angel
that day.
sent to
Yep,
shake you awake
yep.
because you're being a victim of your own demise.
Oh, absolutely. And I had created that misery.
Yeah.
And until I realized that, and see, that was the turning point for me, not only personally, but
Mhm.
professionally, because
Mhm.
I realized that I did have choices. And she
Yeah.
was absolutely right. I
Yeah.
was not willing to deal with the consequences of those choices. And that's where people get stuck a lot. And so when I realized what I was doing to myself, I made the choice, and I really sat down and started to reflect on what are my choices.
Mhm.
And I chose to leave the human resources group and I went
Mhm.
into project management. Never knew anything about project management, but I learned. Learned that I could do it well, but I didn't like it.
Mhm.
But I was asked if I would be willing to, in addition to my real job, help facilitate teams that were being formed
Mm.
with groups of people all across the country who had never worked together before, that were now being thrown into these cross-functional teams to try to figure out how we were
Mhm.
going to move forward as a company.
Mhm.
So it was a great learning experience. I learned what I was passionate about, which was
Mhm.
facilitation and helping people grow and helping them work together more
Yeah.
effectively and dealing with difficult people and all
Yeah.
that jazz. And so when that position was eliminated,
Okay.
2 years later, I went to my boss and said, "Don't find me a home. I'm done."
Mhm.
And I made the choice at that point to take control of me
Yeah.
because I was tired and I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I had 6 months of severance. And I
Great.
said, okay, if I can live
Yeah.
on this and get
Mhm.
a business started, and
Mhm.
at that time I was all about building effective teams,
Mhm. Mhm.
then I will keep going. And if I can't, then I'll go to work for somebody else.
Okay.
And that was in 1996.
Yeah.
So here I am today.
So it
And my
worked.
but I will tell you, I've had some very, very bad years. And I
Years
would,
even. So I like that
oh
because
yeah.
I just want to go there for a second.
Yeah.
One small event, and I'm kind of curious if you ever saw that woman again, or if she was just like,
Mm.
a spirit that came through that day. And it's like, Carole,
No,
wake
I
up.
actually have never seen her again. Like I said, she was a part-time person. I didn't really have a whole lot of interaction with her anyway. And
Yeah.
yeah, I never did.
Wild,
But
right?
she was
Just
definitely the door opener for me.
and that her comment probably simmered and processed and bugged you because it pushed on a button that you
Oh
weren't
yeah.
wanting to look at, as you said, but then could no longer hide from because somebody else had spoken it to your
Right.
face,
That's
right?
exactly right.
Without an agenda, without any personal, investment in you, any of that. Just like,
Right.
oh my God, this woman and her bullshit.
I know it was terrible, but she was right. And
But she
see,
was right.
now when I look back, I teach this whole model, and I was
Yes.
living in what I call an other directed world, where something or someone else was
Right.
forcing me to do something. And
Yeah.
so therefore I'm resentful, I'm angry,
Yeah.
I'm frustrated, and I'm a victim.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was living, as opposed to being on the other side of that, which is
Mhm.
I am self-directed.
Yeah.
I am willing to take responsibility for my choices and my
Yeah.
actions.
Yes.
And man, being able to move to that side, it just opened all the doors for me.
You're just
And
so much more
doesn't mean everything was
empowered.
easy. Say
Of
again?
course. Yeah, you're just so much more empowered. Like you're acting from a place of trusting your ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've used this example 100 times, like a baby learning how to walk isn't questioning somebody giving them the authority to do that.
Absolutely.
They're just
They're
practicing it
trying it
until
out.
it clicks, no matter how long it takes. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it doesn't mean that we're showing up in that energy every single time in every single situation, but it's a skill that you practice and increase your ability to be aware of and apply, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over and over and
Absolutely.
over again. Now, the other piece, listeners, really come in here because this is the $1 million, secret sauce thing I want you to hear. Although I'm not one for those types of hype. But Carole just said
Mhm.
27 years, good and bad years
Mm-hmm.
in terms of revenue. So I really want, us to consider, especially, I don't know about you, Carole, and I don't know about you listeners, but the internet is really loud in my world right now around, oh, $30,000 day, $100,000 month, blah, blah. And like, I I don't like hype in general. If anything's really hype, like that Game of Thrones movie, I'm like, ugh. I watched Lost like 10 years later.
Oh no.
Friends, okay. Friends was super awesome and I was all in on that. But so when I start to feel saturated by hype, it's a turn off and I shy away. And even just
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, I felt this shift and I don't even care about the money. Like, I mean, I could use the money, got stuff that, and people and whatever it could help. But putting it aside and getting clear on what I want to do removes this attachment to it and it just kind of purifies the experience. And hearing that over 3 decades, you're going to have these ebbs and flows.
Oh yeah.
It reminds and broadens the perspective that that is life anyway.
Mhm.
Moms of new babies, new relationships, new house, neighborhood, job, hair color,
Oh
these
yeah.
adjustment periods. And then they just kind of diffuse and blend in. And like you're standing here, your home looks beautiful, you look beautiful.
Thank you.
And like vivacious, like you
Oh,
just have this wonderful energy. So we don't I just want to give us an opportunity to think in a much bigger picture than we might be thinking of where we are right now.
right. Well, honestly, the early years were challenging.
Yes.
Um, but it was I did have a business partner in the early years.
Hmm.
She was still working full time, so
Hmm.
I was out there doing the work.
Yeah.
But we made it. And
Yeah.
I think, one of the things there that helped us was we had a CPA that we worked with. We had
Hmm.
several different groups of people that were kind of our board of directors, if you want to think about it from that perspective, that gave us
Hmm.
some good guidance.
Hmm.
When that relationship broke up, that was in 98, I was really doing very well.
Hmm.
And I had a very large contract and a lot of other small things that I was doing. And my boys at that point were growing and
Hmm.
becoming teenagers, and so life
Hmm.
was challenging, but it
Hmm.
was working. And then 9/11 happened,
Yeah.
and it was a horrible experience for everyone. And of course, training and development and any kind of employee development went right down the toilet. I mean, there was no more work. And so all my contracts pulled out.
Yeah.
So I was sitting with 3,700 square foot of office space.
Wow.
Large training room. I mean, I was doing well.
Yeah.
And I had a 3-year lease with 2 years left to go. And I had no idea what I was going to do. And yeah, again, I have a very strong faith. So that's something that I do want to mention just because it's it's a very big part of me. And I truly believe that things happen for a reason. And even though I don't understand the reason, there is always something better that comes on the other side. And I have proven that over and over and over again in my lifetime. Even though in the midst of it, you're like, how am I going to survive this? You know, it's bankruptcy. It's, I don't know.
Yep.
And so it was a very stressful few months. I went to the landlord of the building and I said, I mean, I can't pay my rent. I don't have the money. And they were not just hearing that from me. They were hearing that from a lot of people, as happened in COVID. I mean, you know, so that was another kind of period. But what was really good is there was another company in the building that wanted more space, and I was in their way. So they came in and said they would take my space if I was willing to take a smaller space. And I knew that I would have to go through the whole lease process again, and I would not be eligible. I mean, and that's how exactly what happened. So I moved everything home, and I have not had an office space since. So the learning point for me at that point was it was a sigh of relief because I'm able to continue. So I let go of the employees that I had. I had one person that came with me. She was my admin person, and we moved into my house, and that saved my business. Since then, I realized that I didn't need all that space. I can go anywhere that I need to go. I go on site with my clients, or I rent, you know, hotel, or there's different event places. And now I'm doing a lot virtually, so that helps a lot. So that was one of the situations that was just devastating. But, you know, I think that you look at it and you say, okay, this is really terrible, but what can I do to get on the other side of it? That's where your focus has to be. There have been other times where the market just, I mean, it was just not good. And I've had really tight years where the bills got paid, but I didn't eat really good. But now, you know, I'm in a very different place, and it's not that I'm wealthy, because I'm really not, but I'm okay.
You have your daily bread, right?
Yeah.
You have your daily bread, and you've survived these things, so you know what your resilience is, and you know how to lead yourself through it. And a couple of other things that came out, you know, in your launch time was that you weren't doing it alone. And so in my
I've never been
space,
alone.
right? So this online female solopreneur by myself, I can do this, crush $10,000 hours. That is energy for some people. In my space and in your space, especially as we were talking before we hit record, we like to come together. We like to do it in support, because we all can gain more when we collaborate.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's a beautiful thing. And it removes pressure, and it removes the heavy responsibility of decisions as well, and can lead into more growth areas if there's potentially creative conflict, or, you know, vision conflict. But it's all opportunity to take care of yourself, and to learn about yourself, and navigating through those things, rather than, as the theme here is, you know, sort of react or be proactive, always facing that fork in the road in a choose your own adventure style.
Absolutely.
Of coming to a next outcome, and being more concerned with getting there than the problem that's in front of you at any given time.
Right. Well, you know, I learned very early on that I am better with people around me than I am by myself. And I mean, when I'm in the classroom or when I'm coaching someone, that's a whole nother ball game. But when it comes to business, we are better when we have other people that we can bounce things off of. So I have always had either a coach, a mastermind, a board of directors, if you want to call it that, not formal, but informal. and partners that I can reach out to when I'm struggling with something or when I'm considering doing something different with my business to bounce ideas off of, because I don't know everything and I don't want to know everything.
Yeah.
And that has been so helpful to me. And right now, I went through a training program, oh gosh, 4 years ago, and three of the people that went through the training with me are now part of a mastermind group with me. And we meet
Oh,
every other week
great.
for
Yeah.
an hour.
Mhm.
And we're all in similar businesses, right? We don't
Mhm.
do exactly the same thing, but we help each other. And, we share ideas, we share contracts, we share, here's how I did this. See if this works for
Great.
you.
Yeah.
It just makes the world better.
Yeah.
And believing that you have to do it all by yourself is going to take you down a hole that you just, it's a really hard place to be. You need other people around you. And I don't care who you are. The other
So,
thing that I learned is you can't work 18-hour days
mhm,
forever.
mhm, mhm,
You might do that once in a while,
mhm.
but don't do that to yourself, because you will burn out fast and you will go really down a bad place. And I ended up in the hospital doing that. So again,
Mm,
lessons from someone who's been there, done that. I have to be, I have to
yeah.
be, I have to be. No, you don't. You,
I'm
you have to
glad
take care of you first.
because that was, a note I had made in checking you out, as you're showing up in these teams and motivating leadership and helping people expand. For me, anytime I've been a leader, I then feel like I need to assume some greater energy as it takes, but like, well, you just are anyway. I don't have to become, Wonder Woman, because I just
Right,
am anyway. But in doing that, supporting with the emotional intelligence piece, right? To pace yourself, that what my analogies would be, we don't go from newborn to 40-year-old in a day.
no.
And we need to acclimatize and integrate and
Mhm.
allow that to like fully absorb
Right,
over time, because we're not, information has to come in. We have to learn and um, make it our own in order to start applying it, right? So they're
right.
not these shots of adrenaline that I know I can feel sometimes. I get so excited and so activated, and I want to get 10 years of business done in a weekend.
Yeah, and that's not gonna happen.
And it's not going to happen. And I'm a Capricorn, so I'm like, oh, want to go. But that's been a softening that I've been learning, because I too
Uh-huh.
ended up in this working day job, working online, running around doing hamster wheel stuff. And then you lose sense of what it's all for, right? You
Yeah.
lose connection to just the basics. So what would you say in relaxing into that? This isn't taking us into the emotional intelligence piece of
Right.
how we can learn about ourselves. What were some of the lessons, or the next angel, like lunchroom lady, that came
Yeah.
in to shake you?
Exactly. Well, one of them is self-awareness is a huge part of
Right.
emotional intelligence, and you can't get really good at understanding other people until you get really good at understanding yourself.
Yes. Yes. Say it
And
again.
yeah, you can't get good at understanding others until you understand you. And
Yes.
it's just amazing how many people tell me they know what this is, and then they really hose it up.
Mhm.
The reality is you've got to recognize emotional intelligence is not just about feeling, it's about physiologically feeling,
Yes.
right? So what is happening to my body?
Mhm.
And it's taking a moment to reflect on, am I functioning in the way in which I want to function, right? Is my heart racing? Am I exhausted? Am I
Mhm.
really present? Is my brain attentive, or is it exhausted? So it's learning how to pick up on signals about your physical body as well as your emotional, how that shows up for the rest of the world, because it's self-regulation. So self-awareness is about understanding what's happening and why it's happening, right? What is making me feel this way?
Mhm.
And then what's physically happening to me when I do feel this way? And one of the things that I use when I'm in training is, think about yourself driving down the car and some jerk pulls out in front of you. And what's your immediate reaction? And some people throw hand signals, some people grab the steering wheel, some people scream, some people, hit the horn, whatever. But then the question is, what's physically happening to you? Because we don't think about that.
That's right. We're up here.
It's all up here.
Yeah.
But what's physically happening to you is your blood pressure goes up, the adrenaline rush kicks in because now it's fight or flight, right? And that's a natural response. But the minute that happens, your brain is now not listening to logic. It's listening to fight or flight.
Yeah.
So the more we learn what those responses are, the more we can then make a choice about that response. And see, that's the kicker. That's what emotional intelligence is really about, is making the choice about how I respond, not allowing myself to respond the natural way, which is what causes road rage, right?
Yeah.
People just, I'm angry, so I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to beat the crap out of this guy, which is really stupid, but people do it because they haven't learned to regulate. So once you get that, it's not just the pie in the sky, touchy-feely stuff. And that's what people think when they hear emotional intelligence. They really think, oh yeah, that's that soft stuff. No, it's not. It's really learning how to reduce your blood pressure, how not to allow that adrenaline rush to take over, and how to choose a different response to get a better outcome. So that's the self-management component. And the more you practice that, the better you get. And what happens is you're actually creating new neural pathways in your brain. Now, there are lots of techniques that you can learn to do that. One of them, and I'll share this with you, is just put two fingers together, just like this. And you just rub those two fingers together with such an intensity that you can feel the ridges on each of your fingertips. And you do that for about 30 seconds. And you just focus in on the feeling of your fingertips. And the more you do that, you will notice that your heart rate slows, your blood pressure slows. And what happens is you're firing the right side of your brain. The right side of your brain is where good things happen. The left side of your brain is where bad stuff happens. Negativity, stress, frustration, anger, all that's coming from the left side.
Lack.
So the minute you trigger the right side, all that stuff goes down and the right side goes up. Now, this is what's called positive intelligence, and that's a whole nother realm, but it's engaging emotional intelligence in a physical sense so that it helps people recognize I can control me.
Yes.
And it's not out there that's making me do this. My oldest son, I love him with all my heart, but he's Irish and he has a very hot temper. And so for years, he will say to me, when I'm saying, you really shouldn't yell at the kids like that, or you really shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Mom, I'm Irish. I can't help it. And it's like, yeah, no, not an excuse. Sorry, that doesn't work for me because I know you can. And so he and I laugh about it because, we've had this conversation for years and he's gotten much better, but we have the power to do that. And so all of my lessons throughout my lifetime have gotten me to this place of saying everything I do is a choice, whether it's the emotional intelligence, whether it's the decisions in my business, whether it's how I interact with my clients. It's not something or someone else that's causing me to do that. It's me.
And then you can face these things.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not pretty.
Calmly, right? But it detaches ego. And so if you haven't caught this through the episode, listeners, even my energy will spike and drop. And I can feel when I'm getting like a little bit more hyper and just spoke to that versus when I'm more calm and like satiated in what's happening. And when we drop down, like depending who you're following, you talk about this dropping in or this flow, it's tapping into what you've just described of that emotional intelligence, that certainty. If you look at Carole's energy and listen to her voice, calm and steady, certain, confident, knowledgeable, her her tonality is consistent, right? So in listening to you, like your voice has stayed very stable because you are connected through the
Mhm.
three parts of you, really, your mind,
Yeah,
body, and spirit, to
very true.
deliver and serve from this place. And so when we're starting out, we're starting out 1 to 5 years of business until you kind of get the momentum and the kinks
Mhm.
and the messaging and you know, the reach and all that sort of stuff. You could be in this hyper survival activated state. And so if you can start learning this at the onset, you'll turn everything around
Yeah.
and be in control, choosing for yourself instead of reacting
Mhm.
to everything that's happening. And that is where you can last, because even in my time online, people have dropped off. People I've been in masterminds with, people in you know, coaching groups that um I thought, oh, this is so exciting, here we all go, and half or more disappear
Go
over
away, yeah.
time. And you go and check on them and like they're not even active
Mhm.
anymore, right? For different reasons and things, like it not getting into their story or why, but learning and finding my way to continue to feed myself and
Mhm.
not burn out and not create stress or scarcity, just create um, more like certainty and groundedness to keep going with, right? Not to get lost in the, oh, another rejection. Whoa,
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm done. I can't take the straw that broke the camel's back. Like,
Right.
let's be done with that.
And I have had those feelings. I mean,
Of
they're
course.
very real,
Of
and I
course.
still don't like to hear no, but I'd rather hear no than be strung out, for months
Yes.
on trying to wait for a
Right?
decision. And yeah, but
Yeah,
you just learn how to get over it, and it's that's again the thing with emotional intelligence is it's not that we don't feel, it's how we
that's
respond
right.
to those feelings that matters.
Yes,
And, you
exactly.
said something about responsibility. Covey in his old, I'm
Hmm.
a Covey
Hmm.
fan, right?
Oh
So
yeah, he's
Seven
great.
Habits,
Yeah.
for those business owners who have never read
Yeah.
that, they need to. It's a very good book.
Timeless.
Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, but he
Hmm.
talks about responsibility as being able to choose your response.
Hmm.
And that's what being responsible means. I am able to choose my response. And by choosing my response, I can impact the outcome. I can't change those difficult people in my life. That's on them. But I
Right.
can change the interaction by changing my response. And so, another thing when I talk with groups of people, um, I ask them to think about those difficult people in their lives and kind of identify what those characteristics are that really bother them. And then I ask them, do any of those characteristics ever show up in you? And the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so that person isn't really waking up in the morning to give you a bad day. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not their intent. You're probably not even on their radar screen.
That's right.
Um, so something is happening for that person. Either they don't feel that they're being listened to, they don't feel respected or valued. If we can tap into what's happening under the surface of the behavior, then we can have better interaction with everybody. And it's about understanding what's missing for them. Everybody has needs. We all have needs. And if our needs are not met, think about yourself. When your needs are not met, what happens? If you're hungry and you don't get food, you get grumpy and you get,
Hmm.
hangry is what I
Hmm.
call it.
Yeah, it's a great term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to fill that need. Well, everybody has those needs. They need to be valued. They need to be respected. They need to be heard. They need to be part
Seen.
of something bigger than
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And if we're not fulfilling that, if we're not satisfying those needs, then they're going to act in ways that aren't necessarily acceptable. Same thing goes with kids. When your
Oh
kids are
gosh.
acting out, it's because
Right.
they've got a need that's not met. Now, you may not want them to get what they want, but that's what's happening. And we're just all big kids.
We're all big kids, and now we have a little bit more experience and context
Yes,
to apply our emotions along with our self-awareness. So when we're
absolutely.
children, and I mean children until I tell my teenager all the time, like, you're an adult when you've gotten in debt, when you've been fired, when you've had a broken heart,
when you have to pay your rent,
when you've been paying your own bills for like 6 or more months, you know, when you have some like sand in your bucket,
right?
if you will. And we as adults will expect children to respond emotionally the way
Oh
we
yeah,
think they should at a more mature level than they're at.
yeah.
And yet we haven't necessarily
Mhm.
fully integrated what we know we should. And I will should on this, because
Yeah.
when we do this, we do make the world a better place. And I don't mean to get all Care Bear, but here's where I'm going to take you guys into a bit more of my day job, where I deal with conflict.
Mhm.
5 days a week, 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
listening to people complain about each other, and put me in the middle of it to sort out their sometimes multi-generational issues, sometimes they're multi-month or multi-year issues. And I have seen 4 years, I've been in that industry for over 10 years, people essentially poison themselves over time with the fixation, and
Mhm.
spend time and money and energy and lose love over something like a fence or a driveway or a structure in a backyard.
Mhm.
And over that time, I've practiced avoiding the game of what I call ping pong, which is what you're talking about and how we show up differently.
Mhm.
So if somebody's in a conflict and they're ready for that conflict and they want a conflict and they want to play conflict ping pong with me, I just put my paddle down, and then the ball
That's it.
comes, and they're like, oh, she's not reacting the way that I
Isn't
want
that
to
amazing?
feed.
It's amazing how that works.
What it's done for me has helped me connect to my body and
Mhm.
drop that cortisol reaction, that fight
Yep.
or flight reaction. Now, I've been in a very immersed environment for that, for over 10 years, you know, 5 days a week. So it's like a boot camp of it. But there's other instances of life, like I'm a stepmom in a blended family, and I came in as a single person with no kids or exes or anything. And going through that journey was also very activating. And the lesson that I've learned is you need you kind of, for me, and Carole, you share back, that exposure in order to practice that, because controlled environments, journaling, working, learning give you foundations.
Yeah.
Then you need to apply them,
Absolutely.
and being in a live environment to apply them is where it counts. And so,
Yeah.
you know, everybody's got to find a way, got to find a finger rub that's going to
Mhm.
work for them,
Mhm.
that's portable. It, you know, not necessarily even something you need to reach to your phone to turn on, like a meditation or a music or something that you can call upon from yourself to
Mhm.
start getting out of your own way and calming yourself in the reaction, to put your own ping pong paddle
Paddle down. That's a lot to say. But
sometime
I
there.
agree with you 100%. And I mentioned the positive intelligence before, so I will mention that
Yeah,
again,
bring
because it
it.
is
Yeah.
something that I've been certified in, and it is
Yeah.
actually giving me that portability, which I love.
Yeah.
And it's a process, it's an operating system, if you want to think of it from that perspective, to really it requires all 5 senses. So you can do things
Mhm.
like the finger, or it could be breathing. It's very similar to meditation, but the major difference is it's in 2-minute or 30-second
Mhm.
increments, and you can do it anywhere. I can be
Mhm.
sitting in a boardroom
Yeah.
and have total chaos happening around me, and I can be wiggling my toes under the table and focusing on my toes for 30 minutes or 30 seconds. And I'm not going to allow that physical reaction, that emotional reaction to take over. And when you teach people simple little tools, but there's more to it than that. I mean, that's
Mhm.
a very
Mhm.
simplified version, but it's also getting in touch with what we call the little voices in your head.
Yeah.
Those little voices in your
Mhm.
head that tell you you're
Mhm.
crazy, or that you're not good enough, or that you're not smart enough.
Yeah.
Well, those are saboteurs that we all have. And I've been talking about those little voices since I can remember. But now I've learned that these are actually characters that we've created over time, from time we were children, as
Mhm.
kind of safety valves for us to deal with pressures and stresses, and they're the ones that have kind of kept us okay, and now they get in the way, because they stop us from taking action. They sometimes it's procrastination, sometimes we're people pleasers, we become hyperachievers, and as a result of that, we're not in touch with who we really are as unique individuals. So the process of the operating system is really learning again about you as a whole person, what's happening in you, how that impacts your interaction with the rest of the world, and then what can I do differently to get better results. So it's truly a way in which you could put these things into action. And it is something that I'm doing with a lot of my coaching clients now, and I'm getting really good reactions from that.
Well, it's it's very tangible.
Yes.
And it's something that you can physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally practice. And that is such a key thing where, we could read about things all day long, but we really need to turn them into us. So yes, it's the doing. Like one of my famous examples is I bought a gym membership one year and I didn't lose a pound.
Because you didn't go. Yeah.
Oh, you're smart.
Been there, done that.
Shocking, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I can teach a class all day long, but if you don't use what you're learning when you walk out the door, so what? It was wasting time. And
use it in a way that, doesn't require anything but you to do it is a real barrier breaker and an excuse smasher.
Yeah, it really
because now you're facing your own ultimate personal responsibility. Yes.
And I'm teaching my grandkids, which is really cool.
Right.
I've got a 9-year-old grandson who plays baseball, and he gets frustrated, and so he knows this whole thing with the finger, because it really it calms him, and it's something he can do no matter where he is and no matter what he's doing. And he doesn't understand the concept of it, but hey, it works. And he taught one of his little friends. So, I thought that was cool. They were on a bus, and his friend was getting all upset because he's not used to being with a bunch of other kids in a bus. And, so Declan sat there with him and showed him how to do it, and calmed him down. So, it's simple stuff, but it's creating new habits. It's creating those new neural pathways and getting the left side of your brain to stop, which it will never stop.
You absorb it, right? You lead it through what you're facing. Exactly.
So it's where do we spend the majority of our time? And that's the whole process of positive intelligence, is focusing more on the positive than the negative. And the more we do that, the more we're actually transitioning our mindset, right? And the way we see things into a much more positive aspect. So it's
positive, like not in a like a naive way, but in a realistic, almost strategic way of this has happened, now what?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they're actually showing MRI film of people who have practiced this over a 6-week period, where the different sides of their brain are firing based on different circumstances. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's
6 weeks.
It's neuroscience, it's emotional intelligence, it's psychology, it's all of those things rolled together.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, this is so beautiful. Now, as I mentioned before, I can't help but pick your brain around the differences in growing a business 27 years ago to now this new woman-centered, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, where you're showing up and serving women who are ready to really be who they are, right? And so the business itself and the offers themselves are not as important in terms of the operations of running a business. They're super important in terms of you saying yes to you and giving yourself time and space to be more you and to create yet a different impact. But I want to go here because as new business owners, we can get so caught up in, I need to have a funnel and I need to have a social media and I need to. And the fact of the matter is all that stuff is new. And the people, right? And it may not
our
exist.
funnels were mailings. We did mailings with stamps that you had to lick.
on top of it all,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
we had to
so
look. We had a
the
fax machine. We
here's the
didn't have.
little great.
Yeah.
So just take it away. Just take it away because I want to smash us from thinking that it needs to be any one thing. It needs to be
Yeah, it's
you
not.
making these choices and
Mhm.
just getting out there. Like I've even been saying to people, go and poster in your neighborhood. Like there's
Yeah.
still bulletin boards. Just go
Oh,
and
absolutely.
put it in a coffee shop, at a rec center and just get yourself out there because here's my rant and pet peeve right now is the internet, self included, is trying to sell us stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, all the time.
instead of being a seller, be a server and show up
Hmm.
in servitude with what you have. Put your offer out there, but don't worry about all that noise because it will drown you and
Yeah.
clutter up what it is that you want to do. So just, you know, make it real for us because you're living it.
Well, and thank you, because I really have, and it's funny when I look back on it. Yeah, I mentioned to you earlier that the first cell phone I had was in a
Yeah,
box that
yeah,
was about shoebox size.
yeah.
And I went kicking and screaming when I had to get rid of my BlackBerry. So,
Yeah.
um,
I still have my first one. Nostalgia.
but I mean, now I don't know what I would do without this thing because this is,
Right?
this phone, this gadget is my
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
But we didn't have those. And
Mhm,
so, I built my business speaking. I spoke
mhm.
at every possible group I could find for free.
Okay,
I would stand up in front of people and do 15-minute talks on anything they wanted to hear because
okay,
that was the way that I could get to my market. Business owners is where I was
okay.
going, right? I
Yeah,
wanted to talk to people who would utilize my services. So that was my primary focus. Secondary, I did mailings and we did
mhm,
postcards, we did letters, but it
mhm.
was a very expensive process
Yeah.
and it was time consuming
Oh, yeah.
and it wasn't very effective. I mean, I was lucky if I got 1%
Wow,
return on
wow.
people reaching out and then trying to close something was terrible. So it
Mhm,
was networking. It was, the speaking in front of as many people as I possibly could. And
mhm,
that's how I built my business. When
mhm.
the internet started, I was on LinkedIn when LinkedIn was
Yeah, big.
brand new.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was truly just a business
Mhm,
platform. There was none of what you see today. I mean,
mhm.
they're turning LinkedIn into Facebook now,
Yeah,
which is really
yeah,
weird, and I don't like
yeah.
it. But and I would not go to Facebook for years, even after
Mhm,
Facebook started, because I thought it
mhm,
was just stupid.
mhm.
Why are people posting food? What the
Yeah,
heck? That is just
yeah.
the most ridiculous thing in the world. So I actually started Facebook only because I was told that I really needed to do that from a business perspective. But I think that was in 2012, maybe.
Mhm,
It wasn't that long ago. And so now, I've had to learn all this new technology, and some is easier than others.
yes.
And like I said to you before, I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah.
Um, but I still believe that the best way for me to market myself is to talk to people.
Mhm,
It still is the best marketing tool that I have is me
mhm,
standing in
mhm,
front of people talking. I do. I have been in the space of saying, oh, I have to have this, I have to have that, I have to do Instagram, I have to do, Pinterest, Snapchat, blah, blah. No, no, I don't have the energy, nor do I have the technological know-how to go down that path. And I don't want to. So what I would suggest is find where your clients are. Who are the people you really want to target? And I had a hard time with this because I used to say, well, it's all the people that have people in their business. Well, it's not.
companies, yeah,
I
sure.
mean, ultimately, you're going to find a group that you should be really kind of working with. And that doesn't mean you're going to say no to others, but it means that that's kind of your magnet, right? So for
Mhm,
me, it's
mhm.
healthcare and IT organizations. That's what it's been
Mm,
over the last few years.
mhm,
And so I can put messages together that are meaningful to those organizations. And if other people see them and they're interested, they're going to come
mhm,
to me anyway.
mhm,
But I don't spend a lot of time on that. I really don't. I have most of my business has been built on referral.
mhm,
So I do ask my existing clients to, open the door for me if they know of other people that would be helpful, that
mhm,
they think would be a good fit. Um, I do Facebook. and I do LinkedIn. Those are my primaries, and I post things that I think would be valuable. I don't, it's not a buy me thing. It's more about, here's an article, or hey, have you thought about this? I have cards that I created that are called Better Questions, Better Life. And they're really about asking better questions to start thinking about what matters most in your life. Like, why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I passionate about? Am I listening to myself? You know, and so I use those as posts to get people to think more deeply about what's happening in their lives. So giving people something, and I agree with everything that you said, giving people something is what they're going to remember. It's not the ad. It's not the offer. It's what you're giving them that they can walk away with, that makes them either feel better or makes them think. And those are the two things that I think I would suggest, regardless of what the mechanism is. But you don't have to be all things to all people. Don't even try to do that, because you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Well, you're draining your energy away too.
Oh, yeah.
And as you've talked about, and as I've experienced, and I'm sure you listeners have experienced too, you can draw in people that you don't want to work with. But you know, in the early years, we're kind of desperate and hungry, literally financially, and we'll say yes for the sake of saying yes. But wisdom will show that no, it's safe to say no. It's really safe to decline even a big paycheck in order to preserve yourself and to reach the people that you're going to have a greater impact with, a more meaningful impact.
Right. And be focused, you know, really be focused, because, and it's okay to fire a client.
Yes.
You know, it took me a long time to be able to get to that space.
And then you do it and you're like, okay, this isn't,
it was like,
I didn't die.
Such a relief. I don't have to deal with those crazy people anymore. But better. You have to know what you stand for, and don't allow other people, whether it's clients or whoever, tell you not to stand for that or to do something different. If you don't believe in it, don't do it. If it doesn't serve your bigger purpose, don't do it. And I think that, you know, my purpose in life is to empower, inspire, and encourage people, and now it's women, to live their lives with purpose and intention, becoming the best they can be. That has been my purpose since I started this business. And if it doesn't say yes to that purpose, I don't do it. Because the few times I've made the choice and done it, it was a big mistake.
Right.
So yeah, it's not worth it to me.
So that's having a clear lighthouse on why you're doing what you're doing, to always come back to you. And from that place, you can decisions, because it's a very easy question to check in with and audit whatever it is, that whatever rabbit hole you find yourself going down, to come back to, and, you know, have that honest moment of, should I, will this, why am I, and bringing it back. So in this, I'm hearing that the way we can be visible has changed, but the work we do to be visible has not. And what then, you said something that I found very interesting, that you would just show up and talk about any topic. And so I love that, because now you're just being you, and serving, which then leads to you growing your name, your reputation, your network, your everything like that, and and meeting for the client, which is, I'm going to say, like a very kind of selfless way to grow a business, but strategic, because you're getting exposure, but it doesn't have to be about just any one thing, because I can only talk about the heart and emotional intelligence and, and rubbing your fingers and nothing else. And then, you know, and now you've missed out on a women's group, a birthday party, because I would do something like that. I'd be like, birthday party, guest speaker, women's retreat. You know?
Absolutely.
Type of situation.
Yeah, so, I think that, and the other thing I would say is volunteer. You know, I didn't put that out there, but I really, really believe in that. And I have volunteered for different groups over the years, nonprofits, and I do the community leadership group. I volunteer my time for that. And it really pays off. When you give back, you get back. And I don't do
mhm.
it to get back. I do it
Mm-mm.
because it's my way of giving back.
Yeah.
And it just pays off over and over and over again. So it's, to me, it's a universal law.
Mhm, mhm.
You just put it out there because you want to, and it's just naturally gonna happen. It's gonna come back to you in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely, yeah. Giving and receiving are the waterfall, right?
Yeah,
So the waterfall keeps going, can keep giving water because it keeps getting water and it keeps
right.
that cycle going. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. If you guys didn't learn something from this, you need to listen again.
Oh, thank you.
But I know that you
This has
did.
been fun.
And I also mean to be putting like a disclaimer at the beginning of like getting a journal because so many things come out in these
Oh yeah.
conversations, right? That however you process them, for me, journaling is huge. But Carole, absolutely delightful. You have such a beautiful heart, such a beautiful spirit. And
Thank you.
I've just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And can I give a little plug for something I'm doing?
Absolutely.
I have a webinar coming up and it's free, complimentary. It will be on November 29th.
Okay.
And I have, I'm going to be doing just an hour on getting out of burnout,
Okay.
eliminating burnout. So if anybody is interested in getting rid of burnout, you can reach me at Carole Gill. It's Carole@carolegill.com, and it's
Perfect.
Carole with an E. So there you
Yeah,
go.
put it in. Okay, we'll drop that. I'll flip this episode around and we'll see
Okay,
you in the webinar.
awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.